Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron. If you are into two-channel audio, consider yourself an audiophile or music lover. Welcome home. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. In today's video, I'll be kickstarting the new Sapphire series featuring the Inuos Zen and Zenith. If you aren't familiar with the M3 Sapphires, they are an open baffle speaker from Spatial Audio, which I'll be reviewing later this month. In the Sapphire series videos, I plan to cover all the components I use throughout the review process in greater detail, leading up to the M3 Sapphire review. This will give context as to what I heard coming from each component, and at the same time, answer a ton of questions you guys probably have about getting the most out of the M3 Sapphires. And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, that is exactly what we are going to do. One of the common pairings we see used with Spatial Audio is today's show sponsor, Anti-Cables. And you know what? It's for a dang good reason. These wild-looking cables, which technically aren't cables, are surely thinking outside the box, and I've used them exclusively in this rig throughout the entire review process. Even more, NRD is no stranger to anti-cables. They were one of the first reviews we knocked out as we started up the channel. For this review, we are using their anti-cables, their interconnects, and their power cords. Keeping my integrity in check and knowing that Anti-Cables is sponsoring this show, I'll set aside the hyperbole and leave it at this. I do believe that cables can make a difference, and I do recommend Anti-Cables lineup without any hesitation whatsoever. So yeah, guys, do me a favor and bookmark Anti-Cables below and join me in thanking them for today's video sponsorship. Starting with the Zen Mark III, which retails starting at $25.99, offers a new custom motherboard with reduced EMI, dual linear power supply with ultra-low noise regulators and Nichicon Muse capacitors, asymmetrical isolation feet inspired by the Zenith SE, medical-grade mains filter, dual Ethernet ports for LAN and streamer with dedicated isolation transformers, 8GB RAM with 4GB in-memory playback, ultra-low noise USB audio output, and a new generation quad-core Intel CPU. Next, the Zenith Mark III, which starts at $42.49, offers everything mentioned above, but adds a triple linear power supply with ultra-low noise regulators and premium Mundorf capacitors, and a solid-state hard drive for storage with newly improved vibration and EMI treatment. In both cases, the price of the units will change depending on the amount of storage you select for ripping CDs. As standard, both come with 1TB hard drives, which can be upgraded to 8TB for the Zen and 4TB for the Zenith. Now, in terms of functionality and how I used both the Zen and the Zenith, I tried ripping CDs to the units, which in turn, you can access and play them back in a couple of different ways. Also, when ripping the CDs, it's painless and simple to do. Literally, you pop in a CD and walk away. No weird configurations, buttons, settings, or any other nonsense. The only decision that you really need to make is whether you want the files stored in FLAC or WAV for the extreme purists. For playback, you can download an app called iPeng, or second, which was my preferred method, you can enable Roon. Because I am already familiar with Roon, this made the most sense for me. Both the Zen and Zenith are officially endpoints and or Roon cores. Now, I won't go into great detail into this because we have a ton to cover, but the bottom line is this. Both the Zen and Zenith are a fantastic choice for Roon users and give all the flexibility one could ask for if they're already invested in the Roon ecosystem. Alright guys, so a good place to start in explaining the difference that I heard between these two units. It starts with a story, and it's a true story. When Inuos initially shipped out the Zen for the Sapphire review, it turns out that a mistake was made, and what I actually received was a prototype Zen with some interesting details under the hood. I'll get to that in a second. So, I plug in this Zen, and having used my MacBook Pro as a digital source for many years, I was honestly shocked at the difference that I instantly heard in the music. This was not subtle. Bass dynamics in Slam was so effortless, and that's already something amazing with the Sapphire, so you can imagine I was thrilled hearing an instant upgrade in that department that was already incredible. Even more, the soundstage was wider and deeper as well, but more impressive was how effortless everything sounded in general. Anyhow, to make a long story short, and me being me, I love this thing so much that I knew there was no going back to the MacBook Pro. I reached out to Ineos and I ordered one within a couple of days of listening. Fast forward to my own unit arriving, I decided to throw it into the rig so I could get the prototype back. And that's when something very strange happened. What was jaw-dropping amazing in bass and dynamics, it took a slight hit. And even more, my soundstage wasn't quite as wide or as deep. I was baffled and, to be frank with you, a little bit disappointed. I kept thinking maybe this is a break-in thing, but even after a full week of playtime, I heard little to no changes at all. Anyhow, I decided to pop the hood on my unit and the review unit to see if I could notice anything obvious, and as you might have guessed, this is when the prototype mix-up was realized. The Zen comes with 2 banks of Nichicon caps, which are fine, but what I was staring at in disbelief in the prototype were not Nichicon caps, but actually Mundorf caps, which I swore was an upgrade only offered in the Big Brother Zenith and above. After some emails back and forth with an extremely apologetic Ineos team, it was sorted out, and what was realized is that the prototype never should have been shipped in the first place, and this was an honest mix-up. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's pause. Time out. For those of you out there that think that things like capacitors don't make a difference and it's all in our audiophile heads, I'm going to let you off the hook here and tell you this. This review is only going to raise your blood pressure, and I don't want to do that to you, so we're good, right? Thumbs up, go get some fresh air, pet a puppy, throw a frisbee. Like, you don't want any of this. What I experienced was obvious, and had I started with the actual Zen that I ended up purchasing, well, this would have been just as positive about its performance, but since I heard something in between a Zen and a Zenith, the only logical, rational thing to do was to ask for a Zenith to take for a spin. Ineos was cool and sent me one right away. This true story is better than any kind of creative wordsmith rambling that I could have came up with in telling you. Firsthand, the primary difference between the Zen and the Zenith can be summed up pretty easily. The Zenith sounds wider and deeper than the Zen, and slightly better at dishing out the goods below the belt. Both the Zen and Zenith are leaps and bounds better than my MacBook Pro, and I'm kicking myself for waiting so long to try a dedicated server like the Zen series. Alright, fit and finish. The most striking thing visual about both of these units is the front faceplate. I'm a big fan of the design, and I think this is the kind of piece that will surely turn heads in a quick hurry, which has already happened in my home as friends and family members point out and ask, what is that? Now, past the front panel design, I can't really say much more. I do feel the top cover is a bit cheesy. It's just folded steel or something that you would expect to see in mid-priced hi-fi gear. Granted, the air vents on top save the day in terms of looks and does give it something that stands out from, the typical stuff that we always see. The connections and layout on the back of both units are easy to understand, and if you can plug in a computer, well, you can handle the task at hand with the Zen and the Zenith. Besides, at the end of the day, that's what these are. These are computers with a custom-built BIOS and operating system that's designed with one thing in mind: delivering the purest signal possible to your DAC, perfectly in time and ready to rock and roll. The user experience with the Zen is quite satisfying. To connect either the Zen or the Zenith, you simply pull up a site address, which then allows you to select the server on the network. Scrolling through the interface is painless and quite easy to understand. There really is nothing in here that you would need to check on a constant basis anyway, so this is more about configuring the Zen or the Zenith to your liking, such as enabling Roon, changing RIP formats from WAV to FLAC, and so on and so forth. One thing I'm going to gripe about, while I didn't use the iPeng app all that much in my review, it seems to me that a better step forward for the Ineos team is to offer more options for playback. I know a ton of audiophiles out there that would love to use things like JRiver or Ottervana, and it would be cool to see future releases allow this. I'd also add, it would make sense if Ineos developed their own branded app for playback just to keep the look and the feel of an already polished interface continuous with an app player as well. So the Sapphires are one of the more engaging speakers that I've had the pleasure of listening to here at New Record Day. While they are a distant cousin to the M3 that we've already reviewed, let's get this part right. These transcend everything that was good about the original M3s, and in terms of their performance, especially top-end extension and refinement, they destroy the original M3s. It's not even sort of kind of a little bit close. For those that have followed me through the years, and you know my love for the NX Audicas, which are offered by GR Research, I think the tonal footprint of the Sapphire's top end is actually closer to the Audicas than that of the older M3s. In both examples, with the Audicas as well as the Sapphires, and I'll be reviewing the Audicas next month, with the Zen and the Zenith, that refined top end was even more refined. So this was something that I noticed, and it was a big step forward compared to using the Zen and the Zenith versus using my MacBook Pro. Also, we need to chat about bass. The bass is effortless and confident with the Sapphires down into the 30s without a problem. Guys, you must understand this. Dipole open baffle bass with dynamic drivers will give you something that no box speaker can give to you, which is a quickness and a speed in the bass that you won't believe until you hear it, and when you do, you can't go back. And once again, this is where the Zen and the Zenith really showed some impressive details. I don't get it. I honestly don't understand at all how something that is just sending ones and zeros to the Lampezator Amber 3 DAC is doing all of this. Making my way through some of my favorite tracks that I know like the back of my hands, I'm gonna just tell you, the Zen and the Zenith just sounded more natural, and that's the only way I can say it. They sounded less digital. So, there are winners and there are losers, and that's the way life goes. When it comes to my impressions, the Zenith does win over the Zen, and given its price increase, it should. However, what you guys need to understand, and I'm trying to make this point in this review, is the biggest difference that I heard was going from my MacBook Pro to the Zen and the Zenith, whereas going from the Zen to the Zenith does require a little more attention to the smaller details. While I was in a strange dilemma of hearing an in-between model of the Zen and Zenith, the choice was pretty dang clear for me. As for you guys that are curious if a server-based system like this really does that much better than a run-of-the-mill laptop or computer, I would say this. Unless you have modified that computer and even configured the operating system and BIOS, all for the purpose of better sound quality, as insane as that might sound, you would still be in a quandary. You still don't have a linear power supply, nor do you have a Roon core or endpoint. I guess there are ways of making that happen with a Roon Rock or third-party software, but in the end, that's bordering in the do-it-yourself enthusiast market, and that's not what we're talking about here. What we are talking about is a simple, ready-to-go turnkey solution. Both the Zen and the Zenith will surely breathe life into your rig and will leave you asking the same questions they left with me. How in the heck are these things making such a big difference, and why did I wait so freaking long to try one? Alright guys, my name is Ron. Thank you so much for hopping on board with today's video. Make sure you leave your questions and comments down below, and if you like today's review, give it a thumbs up, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.